Chapter 1. The fluorescent lights of Northwood High hummed with an oppressive drone, a soundtrack to Sarah's daily torment. Each hallway was a gauntlet, a minefield of whispered insults and sidelong glances. Jessica, with her perfectly straightened blonde hair and a cruel smirk that could curdle milk, was the undisputed queen bee, and Sarah, with her mousy brown hair and a penchant for oversized sweaters, was her favorite target. It wasn't just words, it was the shoves in the crowded corridors, the accidentally spilled drinks in the cafeteria, the anonymous notes stuffed into her locker, each one a venomous little barb designed to chip away at her already fragile self-esteem. Sarah learned to make herself small, to disappear into the background, to pray for the final bell to ring. Lunch was a solitary affair in a forgotten corner of the library, her only companions the silent pages of dusty books. Her parents, loving but oblivious to the true extent of the bullying, offered platitudes about kids being kids, and told her to just ignore them. But ignoring Jessica and her entourage felt like trying to ignore a hurricane. One particularly brutal Tuesday, Sarah was struggling to carry a stack of textbooks, when Jessica, flanked by her giggling followers, deliberately tripped her. The books scattered, pages splayed open on the grimy linoleum. A wave of laughter erupted, sharp and piercing. Sarah scrambled to gather her belongings, her cheeks burning with humiliation, tears blurring her vision. Jessica stood over her, a triumphant sneer on her face. "Watch where you're going, freak," she spat, her voice dripping with malice. That night, Sarah cried herself to sleep, the echoes of laughter still ringing in her ears. She dreamt of escaping, of a life where she wouldn't have to dread waking up each morning. Chapter 2. The Whispers in the Walls. The bullying wasn't confined to the hallways. It seeped into classrooms, into the digital spaces Sarah retreated to for solace. Jessica's influence was like a pervasive shadow, casting a pall over every aspect of Sarah's high school existence. Teachers, either overwhelmed or indifferent, rarely intervened effectively. A stern word from a teacher was often met with Jessica's feigned innocence, a wide-eyed "I don't know what you're talking about" that always seemed to work. Sarah learned to be an expert at managing her emotions, at swallowing the lump of anxiety that formed in her throat every time Jessica's name was mentioned. Her home offered a temporary respite, but the emotional scars ran deep. She found it difficult to connect with others, her trust eroded by constant betrayal. Even friendly gestures felt suspect. She'd replay conversations in her head, searching for hidden meanings, for the potential for mockery. This ingrained suspicion made forming genuine friendships a monumental task. She tried once to confide in a girl named Emily, but Emily, eager to gain Jessica's favor, had betrayed her confidence, sharing Sarah's deepest insecurities with the very person who inflicted them. The sting of that betrayal was a potent lesson. Sarah's sanctuary became the local community theater. It was a place where she could lose herself in characters, where her quiet nature was seen not as a weakness, but as a tool for embodying different personas. She discovered a talent for acting, a natural ability to convey emotions that she struggled to express in her daily life. The stage became a place of empowerment, a space where she could be someone else, someone strong, someone loved, even if only for a few hours. She poured all her pent-up frustration and unexpressed feelings into her roles, finding a release that school could never offer. The theater director, a kind woman named Mrs. Davison, recognized Sarah's potential, nurturing her talent and offering her encouragement that was a balm to her wounded spirit. Chapter 3. A Glimmer of Hope. As Sarah moved through her teenage years, the relentless bullying chipped away at her, leaving her feeling hollowed out. The vibrant, curious child she once was seemed to be fading, replaced by a withdrawn and anxious young woman. Her grades, once a source of pride, began to suffer as her focus wavered, constantly on guard for the next attack. She developed a nervous tic, a slight tremor in her hands that she tried desperately to hide. The weight of Jessica's cruelty felt like a physical burden pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe sometimes. One afternoon, during a particularly dismal chemistry lesson, Sarah found herself staring blankly at a complex equation. Suddenly, a crumpled piece of paper landed on her desk. Her heart leaped into her throat, assuming it was another taunt. With trembling fingers she unfolded it, It wasn't from Jessica. It was from Liam, a quiet boy who sat 2 rows over, known for his intelligence and his equally reserved demeanor. The note read, "You looked like you needed a break. Don't worry about the homework. I'll help you later." Sarah stared at the words, a surge of disbelief and a fragile flicker of hope warring within her. Liam, who rarely spoke to anyone, had noticed her distress. He hadn't joined in the mockery. He had offered an olive branch. That evening, Liam found her in the library. He didn't ask about the bullying directly, but he patiently explained the chemistry concepts, his voice calm and steady. He shared his passion for science, his quiet enthusiasm infectious. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a sense of genuine connection, a crack in the wall of isolation she had built around herself. Liam became a steady presence, a quiet anchor in the storm of her high school life, reminding her that not everyone at Northwood High was consumed by cruelty. Chapter 4. The Escape Route. Liam's friendship was a lifeline, but it couldn't erase the years of trauma. Sarah knew that Northwood High was not a place she could thrive. The graduation ceremony loomed, a beacon of freedom, but the journey there still felt fraught with peril. Jessica's bullying, while perhaps less overt now that they were older, still simmered beneath the surface, manifesting in subtle snubs and whispered rumors. Sarah learned to anticipate Jessica's moves, to navigate the social minefield with a wary grace. She poured her energy into her applications for colleges, aiming for institutions as far away from her hometown as possible. The community theater remained her solace, and Mrs. Davison encouraged her to pursue acting professionally. Sarah found a burgeoning confidence on stage, a newfound ability to command attention, to project strength. She started taking on more challenging roles, her performances drawing praise from audiences and critics alike. This artistic validation began to fill the void left by the social rejection she experienced daily. Her escape plan solidified when she received an acceptance letter from a prestigious drama school in New York City. It felt like a ticket to a new life, a chance to shed the skin of the bullied girl and become someone entirely new. She celebrated with Liam, who was genuinely happy for her, though a hint of sadness touched his eyes. He was applying to engineering programs, his own path diverging from Sarah's. As the school year drew to a close, Sarah felt a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. Leaving Northwood High meant leaving behind the constant threat, but it also meant leaving behind the only life she had ever known, however painful. Chapter 5. A New Horizon. New York City was an exhilarating, overwhelming, and utterly liberating experience. The anonymity of the bustling metropolis was a welcome balm to Sarah's soul. No one knew her as the mousy girl from Northwood High. Here she was simply Sarah, a student with a passion for acting, eager to learn and to grow. The drama school was rigorous, demanding, and filled with talented, driven individuals. Sarah thrived in this competitive yet supportive environment. She pushed her boundaries, explored new facets of her craft, and discovered a resilience she never knew she possessed. She found a small, walk-up apartment in a less-than-glamorous part of Brooklyn, sharing it with 2 other aspiring actresses. Their lives were a whirlwind of auditions, acting classes, and late-night rehearsals, a far cry from the suffocating predictability of her high school years. Sarah learned to navigate the city, to embrace its chaos, and to find beauty in its grit. She made new friends, people who saw her for who she was, not for who Jessica had tried to make her. These friendships were built on mutual respect and shared dreams, a stark contrast to the superficial alliances of her past. There were moments, of course, when the old insecurities would surface. A harsh critique in class, a particularly demanding audition, or even a fleeting resemblance to Jessica in a crowd could send a ripple of anxiety through her. But now, she had tools to cope. She had her craft, her new friends, and the growing certainty that she was more than the sum of her past hurts. She was forging her own identity, one brick at a time, in the vibrant, demanding, and ultimately rewarding landscape of New York City. Chapter 6. The Spotlight's Glare. Sarah's dedication and raw talent began to shine. She wasn't just surviving in the cutthroat world of acting. She was excelling. Her performances in student productions garnered attention, and soon she was landing small roles in independent films and off-Broadway plays. The sacrifices were immense. Late nights, ramen noodle dinners, constant rejections. But each small success fueled her determination. She learned to embrace the vulnerability of the stage, to tap into a depth of emotion that had been honed by years of silent suffering. One evening, after a particularly powerful performance in a critically acclaimed play, Sarah was backstage, basking in the glow of applause and well-deserved praise. A small knot of people, including a few casting directors and agents, were congratulating her. As she shook hands and accepted compliments, her eyes scanned the small crowd, and then she froze. Standing near the back, looking older, a little more polished, but unmistakably the same, was Jessica. Her blonde hair was still perfectly styled, her makeup impeccable, but her usual smug expression was replaced by something Sarah couldn't quite decipher. Awe, nervousness. It was a look Sarah had never seen on Jessica's face before. Jessica met her gaze, and for a long moment, the noise of the backstage buzz faded into a dull roar. The ghosts of Northwood High flickered in Sarah's mind, and for the first time in years she didn't feel fear. She felt a strange, unsettling curiosity. Chapter 7. A Ghost from the Past. Jessica surprisingly approached. The usual entourage was nowhere to be seen. She looked flustered, her perfectly manicured hands clasped in front of her. "Sarah?" she began, her voice a little shaky, a far cry from the confident, commanding tone Sarah remembered. "Sarah, it's me, Jessica." Sarah offered a polite, guarded smile. "Jessica, it's been a long time." I saw your play," Jessica continued, gesturing vaguely towards the stage. "It was incredible. Truly, you were amazing." The words seemed to catch in her throat, as if admitting Sarah's talent was a bitter pill to swallow. An awkward silence descended. Sarah waited, her gaze steady, an unreadable expression on her face. She wondered what Jessica wanted. An apology? A chance to rekindle some twisted form of acquaintance? The years had changed Sarah, hardened her in some ways, but also given her a profound sense of self-worth that Jessica's presence couldn't diminish. Jessica stammered, looking down at her expensive heels. "I've been following your career, from afar. It's remarkable. I never thought." She trailed off, seemingly unable to articulate her thoughts. Sarah simply nodded, allowing Jessica to stew in her own discomfort. The power dynamic had undeniably shifted. Sarah, once the victim, was now the one in control, observing the former aggressor grappling with a reality that contradicted her past perceptions. It was a strange, almost surreal moment, a culmination of years of silent resilience. Chapter 8. The Unraveling Thread. Jessica's visits became more frequent, a recurring unwelcome guest at the edges of Sarah's newfound success. She would appear at premieres, at award ceremonies, always with that same hesitant politeness, a shadow of her former self. Sarah remained courteous, but distant, unwilling to reopen old wounds or grant Jessica access to the life she had fought so hard to build. Yet Jessica persisted, her presence a constant low hum of unease. One evening, after a particularly grueling award show where Sarah had won a significant accolade, Jessica found her alone in a quiet corner, away from the flashing cameras and congratulatory crowds. Her facade of composure seemed to be crumbling. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the expensive makeup. "Sarah, I need to talk to you," Jessica pleaded, her voice raw with an emotion Sarah had never heard from her. "Please. I'm so sorry." Sarah's heart ached, not for Jessica, but for the younger Sarah who had endured so much pain. "Sorry for what, Jessica?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "For everything," Jessica choked out, tears streaming down her face. "For being a horrible person, for making your life hell. I was so insecure, so jealous. You were always so smart, so quiet, and I hated that I couldn't break you. I tried, God, I tried. And now I see what you've become, and I'm so ashamed. I can't live with it anymore." The confession, raw and unexpected, hung in the air between them. Sarah listened, her expression unreadable. The years of torment, the stolen joy, the deep-seated insecurities, they were all laid bare in Jessica's tearful confession. It was a moment of reckoning, a confrontation with the ghosts of their shared past. Chapter 9. A surprising plea. Jessica's confession, however painful, didn't erase the past, but it did, in a strange way, bring a sense of closure. Sarah, having processed her own trauma and built a life of her own, found herself capable of a degree of empathy. She still didn't trust Jessica, but she could see the genuine remorse in her eyes. "I understand you're sorry, Jessica," Sarah said softly, her voice carrying the weight of years of unspoken pain. "But what happened, happened, and it changed me." Jessica nodded, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "I know, and I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again. But there's something else." She took a deep, shaky breath. "Sarah, my life, it's not what it looks like. My perfect marriage fell apart, my career is stagnant. I'm so alone, and every time I see you, thriving, happy, I realize what a fool I was. And I think about how much I miss that spark I used to see in you before I crushed it." She hesitated, her gaze fixed on Sarah's. The air crackled with a tension Sarah couldn't quite place. "This is going to sound insane," Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. "And I deserve whatever you say. But Sarah, would you consider marrying me?" The question hung in the air, absurd and astonishing. Sarah stared at Jessica, utterly speechless. The former bully, the architect of so much of her teenage misery, was proposing? It was a twist of fate so bizarre, so unexpected, that Sarah couldn't even begin to process it. All the years of suffering, all the hard-won independence, had led to this moment. Chapter 10. A different kind of future. Sarah didn't laugh. She simply looked at Jessica, at the raw vulnerability etched on her face, and felt a profound sense of detachment. The thought of marrying Jessica, the embodiment of her deepest insecurities, was so far removed from anything she had ever envisioned for her future that it was almost laughable. But the plea wasn't born of malice or manipulation. It seemed to be born of a desperate, misguided attempt to undo the past, to find solace in a connection, however warped. "Jessica," Sarah began, her voice steady, devoid of the anger or fear she might have once felt. "That's a very strange request, and I appreciate that you've come to terms with what you did. But marriage isn't a way to fix the past. It's a partnership built on love, respect, and trust. And while I can acknowledge your apology, those things simply aren't there between us." Jessica's face fell, but there was a flicker of understanding in her eyes. I know. I didn't know what else to say. I'm lost." Sarah offered a small, sad smile. "I was lost for a very long time too, Jessica, but I found my way back, and you have to find your own way. You need to look inward, not outward, for happiness." She paused, then added, "I hope you find peace." "Jessica, I truly do." Sarah turned and walked away, leaving Jessica standing alone in the quiet corner. She didn't look back. The offer of marriage, a relic of a past she had meticulously dismantled, was an echo she could finally ignore. As she stepped back into the glittering chaos of the event, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced before. The scars remained, a testament to her resilience, but they no longer defined her. Her future was her own, unburdened by the shadows of Northwood High, a future she had built with her own two hands, brick by painstaking brick. The story of Sarah and Jessica had reached its final, unexpected chapter, and Sarah was ready to write the next one, on her own terms.